I'm Mary Jo Clark, instructor with art in the area for most of my life. I'm enjoying the Amherst library sessions, and I hope that you will enjoy what I have to present to you today. It's getting towards the holiday season, and I don't want to get too Christmassy, but I thought perhaps we would kind of ease in the S word for snow because it's coming. And I have a project today with some stamps, so you can get going on greeting cards if you'd like. A smaller version of painting. Some people like to work small. This is a smaller version of a painting that you would do for winter time. This is a pen and ink that I'll work with, and I'll show you how to do the pen and ink for a greeting card. This is a little bit larger, but you can fold them in half. And if you want to, you can start and work with watercolor pencils and do color version. So we're going to cover stamping and then free form, and I hope it's going to be an enjoyable session for you. The things that you will need is watercolor pencils. They come in sets like this. I enjoy the General's Kimberly set because it's a soft pigment and they melt and blend easily. Also Derwent, D-E-R-W-E-N-T. They're made in England, a good pencil brand. Some of the other brands are a little bit too hard. They're more like a colored pencil, and the colors don't blend very well. Then if you just go to the drugstore or whatever and just buy a set of watercolors, Crayola is good pigment. Some of the other brands that are coming out that are like 99 cents are too gooey. They're like plastic and they don't blend. The Crayola brand paint is good. This is something we did with acrylic paint. We're not going to get into this today, but I thought I would remind you of what we've done in the past. This is just a plain paper bag, and we painted over it. So you can recycle things if you like. Paper comes in different sizes. You've got your standard 9 by 12 or 8.5 by 11. You can fold this for cards. It's a little tricky, but you can buy them already, the 5 by 7. You just fold them in half and put them in an envelope. So it turns out to be this size. So if you don't want to buy this, if you don't want to expense it, then you can fold your paper. I did bring this. This is really pricey, but it's good. These are Strathmore watercolor greeting cards, and they also come with the envelopes. They open up like so. So if you want to get into the investment, I think these are so much better than going to the store and paying a commercial brand, which we won't mention, for cards $5 to $10 each, when you can do this and give so much pleasure because it's something you made for someone else. Now, if you want to, if you have stamps at home, there's various different kinds of stamps you can use. These are cool because these are like snowflakes. They're round. But you'll find kits for winter at the art stores or even online. This is a child's stamp. It's a foamy, but it's a snowflake, and it does really well. You're going to be surprised what the watercolor pencils can accomplish, because you're going to put the paint right on the stamp and stamp it as if it were ink. sometimes if you get too wordy, you're going to get spaces in there. That's what happened with this one. This was really light. So we use micron pens. It's a permanent ink. And I use a .02 size. Not 2.0, .02. It's very, very fine. And you can do a lot of things with it. You're not going to fill in a letter to make it black. You're just going to outline. So when my stamp failed me, I just took the pen and I filled it in so it's darker, so you can see it. So there's ways to fix things that are kind of cool. There's stamps out there. I have one here, Give Thanks for Thanksgiving. I've got the snowflake. This is a Christmas tree. We're going to play with these. But you can make your own scenes. They have stamps with just like trees on them. So it doesn't have to be a Christmas theme. It can be a winter theme if you like. I'll show you how to do this. This is what I call staining. Staining is with the watercolor pencil, but on some papers, say these are tags, this is not watercolor pencil. So you really don't want to saturate this with water because it'll wrinkle up and it won't be pretty. So I'm not using an ink pad because I want to show you how to use these watercolor pencils. This is the only time, only time that you put the paint pencil into water. What you're doing is softening the tip. For regular paintings, you don't do this because you can't blend it. It soaks right into the paper and you have a blot. But what you want to do is to get the paint to come out on the stamp, just like it were ink. That one is a harder tip, and it's not working that great. So I'm going to get another one here. General's Kimberly, I absolutely adore because it's consistent. You can see I don't have a lot of slop to it. It's going right on that stamp. This is a snowflake stamp. But you will notice you have a little bit of blop of water in there. So instead of taking this stamp and putting this on your finished piece, I would take a piece of paper towel and just give it a quick hit. When you put your stamp down, you kind of hold it for a second because you're transferring paint to a surface that needs to absorb it, and it's not necessarily watercolor paper. Turned out pretty good. So after that, I can hit it and I can go softer. So you can make a theme. You can do these for little gift cards. You can write over this. Or if you want to, you can do other color renditions around it. You can do more like an ice crystal thing. You can make these a little bit bigger. It makes it darker. You can make it a bigger snowflake. If you want to blend it out a little bit, take your brush. Now these are the round brushes. This is a smaller one. This is a 3. This is a 6. The round is what this is at the end. And that does, for the most part, that does everything that you need it to do. Now, if you want to stain, you take a damp brush and you add the water. See, it's not water, it's not going to move, it's not puddling, it's not running. But you can pull this out and do a little color in the background. If you wanted to add a different color, because the water is not running all over, you can do a different color right beside it. Because this is wet and not dry, the paint comes right off on it very smoothly on the stamp. You can see it in camera. Now I do something that I call spritzing. This is taking your brush and angling it 90 degrees over the tip of your watercolor pencil, and you hold it firmly, and it's a firm stroke down. So you can add snow to this or fill in the background. You can take the water and you can manipulate the paint around also. This might be a little darker. You can see this better. It's a way to fill in the background. It looks kind of pretty. If you don't want an all white card, if you want to stain it, you just take your brush and manipulate the paint around. Like I said, you're not using a lot of water. It's a damp brush. And if you keep going over your strokes and pulling away, you can color in the background if you want. Now, you don't take your paint and go into your pattern because you will smear this paint. What you do is take your paintbrush and work it out towards the edge of your piece. Even when you're painting regular pictures, because the paint has a tendency to pool, that's what you would do. So you're not pulling in because you don't want to smear this. You're pulling away from. That way you can do backgrounds and not mess up your drawing also. Keep that in mind for future reference. But that turned out kind of neat. And then you can, when this dries, you can put lettering on it if you want to, or you can sign the back. But this is really a cool gift card. I'm going to add some green just because I want to. Just to show you the difference in the tone. Now you can do this in red, you can do it in any other color, but my palette is usually blue and purples, lavenders, and I stick to that pretty much. So you wouldn't want to use the green, okay? This is like a Christmas theme. This green to me is not pleasing to the eye, so I want you to watch your colors. This is like moss green or whatever. So you go, oh my, I have to throw this away. No, you don't. This is a way to fix it. And take lavender. and I have water already softening the paper. And I'm taking the purple or a dark lavender. There's light and dark lavender. You want a darker color, so you cover up that green. And I take a little water and kind of smush it around a little bit. But you can cover that green if you want. It's a little darker. But if you have an ugly color that you absolutely cannot handle, if you take your watercolor pencils and go over it, you can leave it dry, or you can pull it out a little bit. It's just a way to fix that awful green. Now you have a dark purple. If you don't like that, then you can throw it away. But that's kind of interesting, and you might want to do the same thing to the top so it matches. But there's ways that you don't have to throw things away. Now, this is a piece of paper I folded. It's not a commercial card, so I didn't pay extra. That way I don't throw away some of your renderings, and then you have extra paper like at the bottom of some of the stuff, like here. You could cut that off, fold it, and make a card out of it. So not to waste watercolor paper, because it's very expensive. And they keep raising prices on everything, so you really don't want to go there. Now on here, you can take your micron pen and always check it out to make sure that it's gonna work for you before you start. You can use a paper towel. Sometimes the tip dries. Don't ever use this with water because it kills the tip. The tip is like a felt. It's really hard. But if you use water, it just won't draw the ink to the tip anymore. So make sure if you're using this, the paint's dry, the paper's dry, you don't have any water around. Now you can use a ruler edge. You can make a frame around this if you want to. You can just add a few accents. Nothing that you can't do. I mean, this is just follow the lines or whatever. That kind of adds a little bit. And then, if you want to, you can add some decorations. I'm going to do a little bit of holly. I just put a little bit of holly, and I'll put a holly in the corner. Now, when you're doing holly, I'll use a smaller piece of paper to illustrate. Trying to do this step by step so you don't get frustrated and give up. I want you to keep going with this and just play with it. Be relaxed. Holly, you draw a line. That's the vein, the main vein. And then it's like U's. They're not closed. They're very, or a smile. Maybe you could do a smile around it. Think of it that way. That's holly. Usually they come in clumps. You have red berries, the holly's green. It tapers as you get to the end. And it's usually, if you put a clump, it's either 3, 5, use the odd numbers like you do for other things. You never draw 2 of anything, you always have to put 3. It's just more pleasing to the brain. It's an old rule from the old masters, the rule of 3. So it's the odd number out. So I'm doing 5 on this one, just to show you. So when I come to the corner here, this larger version is the smaller one that I did here. It's very tiny. But I'll do this real quick. But always put your median line down first, and that will help you draw out those little smile lines around. You can do any kind of squiggles around you want to. You can make them look like ribbons. And this is the pen and ink portion. If you had a stamp for the whole thing, you could stamp the whole thing, but it's got to be in permanent ink. I have a pen that I use all the time, and I'll show you the difference. Because when you add water, I like this because I blend and I shade with it. But for all intents and purposes, use permanent ink. Because when you hit this, see how it's going to smear? Now, you may like that when you're doing buildings or landscapes or whatever, okay, which I do. But when you add the water here, see, nothing happens. That's what you want for your drawings, to keep them clean when you're doing greeting cards and that. I put a lot of water on there and it's not moving, but see this one? This is water-soluble ink. So be real careful of the ink that you get. It's got to be permanent. So I put a little squiggle on down the side, and I use the holly on the top. So I've got a pretty nice looking card here. However, you're going to put some color in it. Now, I like the watercolor pencils because they are so versatile. You can use these like colored pencils, but they're paint. They're the same paint pigments that are in this little box. They just give you more versatility, and they're wonderful. Also, if you do them dry, you can erase if you really mess up. If you add water, forget it. You can't move it. I'm trying to get my, here we go. This I want to show you. It is the sharp point that you should use with your watercolor pencils. You're in complete control. You can see what's happening. You're not going to break off the tip. Because remember, you're working with paint. Don't do this when the paint is wet, if you've been using it, because it'll just gum up and it'll keep breaking on you. So you don't want a real sharp point. This is good enough. You're going to get enough pigment off of it. So on here, I can take, now this is paint, remember. And if you put it on dry, it's like a crayon. So you don't have to add water to this, which means you're not going to smear your card. I'll just do this ribbon part so you can see. I won't bore you with doing the entire thing here. See how bright that is. And you stayed within the lines and you haven't smeared it and you don't have paint going all over. And I'll show you what happens when you don't follow instructions. It goes kittywampus and you might get frustrated. So here's the green. I can do the holly. And I can use different shades of green. Here's kind of an olive green. I don't have to use the same shade. I can blend on here. If I want to build a little bit of yellow, I can put yellow in here to brighten it up. If I absolutely hate this, it's dry paper, dry paint. I can lighten it up. Now, you're not going to take all the pigment off because this is paint. This is not pencil. But I've lightened it up considerably. So you can correct yourself. A lot of people don't think you can correct with watercolor pencils, but yes, you can. I have a bright color here I can use. Now see, I can put a different color right over what I just erased on. Because I haven't added the water, it's really, really important to remember. You add the water, it softens your paper and it can tear. So as long as you're using the dry, you're in good shape. Now here I want to add a little bit of dark. This is going to make it look really, really nice. And then I'm going to color in the little berry things. You see with the little shading, I think it looks kind of neat. It's got a little bit of yellow in there. We erased a little bit, and then we put the color back on. Now, don't add water. And I'll show you why. When you're using the watercolor pencils, I like to start in the center and work the paint out. So it's this kind of motion. That way, if you have another color, you could easily blend it in. Kind of looks kind of nice. Now, this is a greeting card. This is not a painting. On a greeting card, if you add water, okay, what are you going to do with it? If it smears, see, it's going to run. if you add the water. So you can sop it up if you want with paper towel. But you're still going to have green stain in the background. So if you like it like that, that's fine. But for the most part, you want a clean card and you don't want it to be smeary. It doesn't have that professional look to it. And then if you go back and put the color back in again, now you can't blend it. You can't do much with this at all. It is what it is, because the paper was already wet. So you have more control if you keep, for the greeting cards now, this is not painting, for the greeting cards, if you keep it dry. You can add detail and the ink is not going to smear. I can put that little candle flame in there, nothing's going to happen to it. And then I can add color if I want to the lettering. Just to add a little pizzazz if you want. Or not, I mean, you could leave it black, but if you wanted to add a little color, looks kind of cool, I think. And then, if you don't like that, you can, if you wanted it blue, you said, oh, I don't think I want to do that. I want to put some other color on there. You can take blue and go over it and change the color totally. And you haven't smeared the background, you just change the color. You could go light to dark. You can't always go from dark to light unless you use your eraser, and sometimes that doesn't work. So you're better off starting out with light pigment, adding darker, pressing more to get your shading in. Now I'm going to add some shading to the ribbon here, and I'll show you what I mean. You can see a little shading to the ribbon. I just added a little bit of blue over the red just to darken the red a little bit. It just makes it look nicer. You can nitpick this and keep going and doodle with it forever. Or you can do it simple and then just quit. So whatever mood you're in, this is going to suit your mood. If you're in the mood to sit there all night and just play and play and play, then fine. If you're in a hurry and you want to get a card out, you can do it really quickly. But I thought this was kind of cute. Now, this is a foamy. It's like a real soft styrofoam. It's not like a sponge. It's not going to absorb the water. But keep in mind, it's glued. This print is glued onto this. So if you can't soak this in water because this will separate. And this is meant to be able to be picked up. If you don't have this backing, it's really, really difficult to get a clean stamp. So I'm going to try and get a color here that you can see really well. I'll try a blue-gray. Again, I'm doing a stamp. So I am putting my pencil in the water to soften up the pigment. Now after I'm done with it, you have to put it on the paper towel and stop that action. You have to dry it off. because it'll keep melting and then you'll just have wood. With this, you have to add the paint rather quickly. So sometimes you can do stamping in sections if you only want to do a half a stamp or something. But you really do have to work a little bit quickly with some of these larger stamps. The little bitty ones, the little snowflake dudes, you can get the paint on really quick, stamp them in, you're good to go. Now, in the light, I don't think you can see this, but you can see it glistening. If it's glistening, you can tell that you've got paint on everything and you're ready to rock. So, when you put it down, don't rock the stamp. Don't go back and forth. It will smear the stamp. You put it down clean and you press down, but don't rock it. When you press down, hopefully the paint's going to transfer to the paper. It all depends a lot on the atmosphere. If there's a lot of moisture in the air or if it's really dry. In the middle of winter, if you're doing things in January, the paint's going to transfer to paper differently. Hey, we got a good one. It transferred perfect. Now, if you got paint on here still, if you hit it again, you're going to get a lighter version of it. So you can do a cluster. It's going to be lighter. But if you don't put enough paint on, this is what you're going to get. You don't want this one, you want the darker one. So there's the two versions. Now, the good thing is, you have this snowflake, and it's giving you an outline. So, if you don't want to take the chance of putting the stamp and getting a smeared line, you can magically go in and fill that stamp so it looks like it was stamped, because you got the image there. This is wet, so it's going to go down the same way as it did on the stamp when you stamped it. See how good it's looking? So don't be disheartened if the stamp doesn't come out just the way you want it. Like I said, if you have a fan blowing or the furnace is on, it's going to dry the paint more quickly. It's going to be frustrating, but not to worry. You can just do this. Voila, you fixed your problem. You have another snowflake. Now, important thing, right away before this dries, you take clear water and a paper towel, and you gently remove the paint from this. You can press down, but don't pull it. If you pull it, it's going to roll off, and it's going to take the glue with it. You don't want to soak this at all, but the paint, you can see the paint's coming off. Now don't worry, this used to be a white snowflake. It's going to get stained. But what you're not doing is you're not filling in the surface solid. It'll still remain porous enough so the paint will adhere next time. But you have to get that coating off, otherwise eventually the pores will fill in and this won't work. And good luck trying to find these stamps They're hard to come by. I found a lot of these in the children's section. Because they're not what they call professional stamps. That's these really expensive ones. These are like sometimes on sale for 50 cents or $1. So then you let it dry. Ta-da. You can do wrapping paper. If you have like shelf paper and you want to take and stamp, you can do your own wrapping paper, and then you can do a little gift card with it. And this doesn't have to be the full pattern. You can offset this and just have an arm of a snowflake, and that will match. Okay. Now, if you really, really, really want to get into this, you don't want to use the stamps, but you want to make a personal greeting card, micron pen. You can draw any configuration that you want. But I have a trick for you for the snowman. Here's a template, and this is for noodles. This is for measuring spaghetti. But look how cool. It's plastic and it's hard, and you can use this to do your snowmen. Now, those are the circles. What you did wrong here was your left space. So your snowman isn't together, okay? So pay attention when you're doing your circles that you attach, because there's a piece of plastic in between. You have to move this circle up till you can see the bottom of the other circle. And you won't have that space. So sometimes you have these little tricks, but you kind of have to adapt. They don't do a lot for you. You have to think about it. So there's your snowman. And see how it's different? You had to adjust the pattern a little bit. So I'm going to put a little character on here. I'm going to put a scarf on him. I'm going to put a hat on him. And it can be stylized. It doesn't have to be just perfect. You can just zigzag a couple of lines across, and he's perfect. Now I usually have stick arms. Now if I decided I wanted a bigger bottom, and what I had, I can make the lines thicker, and I can use paint. I'll show you. So this is a mistake that you made. We'll fix it. Usually shadows with snow are blue. If you look in the middle of the night when the snow is sparkling, and I'm sorry I have to talk about snow when it's so pretty outside, but this will be aired in November, and by then I'm sure we're going to have a little bit of the white stuff. So So you got your snowman so far. And like I said, if you make the bottom part too small, you can add a line and fill it in with the blue. Now comes the fun part. You can put a hat on them. And I'm doing this all dry because you don't know what type of paper you're working with. So if you're working with watercolor, it's perfectly fine. But if you're not, then the paper is going to buckle. So just leave the watercolor paint this way, dry. Now, if you find you got something too dark, you want to lighten it up, you just take an eraser, and I like these pink pearls. They're very firm. You can lighten everything up. I put a carrot for a nose. I don't have the orange handy, so I'm going to put yellow and red together, and it makes orange. You can mix your paints on here. You put one color over another color, and it mixes automatically. That's why I said the first layer should be light, so you can change the colors easily. Now, if you think his scarf is too plain, you can add patterns to it. So I can put little green dots in there. It all depends on what your personality is, how flamboyant you want your snowman to be. He can be conservative or not. It doesn't matter. And then always underneath your snowman, you're going to have a little bit of shadow, depending on where the sun comes up. So you got a snowman for a greeting card very simply, and you didn't draw him. Now, if you wanted to draw him, by all means, do your circles. He's going to come out a little bit different. You're going to have more character. Maybe you're going to have coal for the nose and a top hat. I like the carrot noses myself. I mean, you can do anything that you want with the snowman. Good old Frosty the Snowman. You can put a scarf on him if you want to. You don't have to. You can put any kind of a hat on him that you want. I like the stocking cap. I don't care for the top hat too much. But you can add the character however you want. And then for the hands, you don't have to have sticks. You can just move them around. So you got different ways to do the snowman. But he's always sitting in snow, so you're going to have a few snow drifts around that he's sitting in. So he's very rarely sitting on flat. So to put a round ball on a flat line won't work. So you kind of have to make the snow kind of drift around him a little bit. So he doesn't roll down the hill. If you put him here, he wouldn't be stable. It's just like putting an apple on a table. If you don't put the shadow underneath the apple, it's floating in space. It's not actually sitting on the table. So there are your ideas for the snowman and the snowflake. This we started one year and I left it unfinished so I could explain. First of all, we draw a circle, just like a clock face. And then you decide what you want on it. So you start out with holly. So you go 12, 6, 3, and 9. So you have the 4 quadrants. And then you add another element. I put in pine cones. I've got a little bit of evergreen in here, and then I put in some ornaments, and the last thing I did was I put ribbon in. But when you get done, this is awesome. You can cut the circle out. You can put someone's picture in there. You can put this in a picture frame just for Christmas. I mean, you don't have to keep it all year round. But this is really special if you want to hand somebody something. And it's handmade. But this is all done dry with the watercolor pencil. And it just makes a nice rendering. It's very clean. Keep in mind again what happens when you add the water, it gets smeary. And you can see the difference. You wouldn't want this to be all smeary and drippy. Just wouldn't work. So we got the tag. You can easily make tags to match. Also, we have these wonderful pouncing things. They don't always work. They look really cool, but they don't always work. So I'll try and show you what I mean. You have to get the paint goopy, and you have to have a tray like this. The watercolor pencils don't work on these little guys. So if you pounce it, you got to hold it for a minute. You got to circle. It's a little wet. You have to wait till it absorbs. This is not watercolor paper. So if I picked it up, it would dribble all the way down. Let's see how wet that is. So that's what they do. You have to remember to clean them out, wash them out right away so they don't get stiff and they don't fill in. This is just like the stamp, only this is even softer yet. Now, if I took a paper towel and I dabbed that, it's going to lighten the color. So you really don't want to. You want to let this sit. So I'll show you what happens. If you put a paper towel and you absorb it, it gets lighter. So if that's what you're aiming for, this could be Christmas ornaments. You could add your Christmas tree branch to this. And I'm using the pen and ink with it to make it more look like a greeting card at this point. You could even put somebody's name on the little balls if you wanted to. Okay, pretend you hate the green, okay? You can take a different color. I'm going to add purple just so you can see it. And I'm using the side. I'm not using the point because the paper's wet. If I use the point, it would tear the paper. So I'm using the side. And I'm not pressing hard. I'm doing it very, very lightly. Now on the edge, I can use the tip because I'm not gonna, I used water already. I'm not gonna use water again. This is for definition. And I'll make one red. I mean, these are ugly colors, but I want you to see what you can do. Remember, you've got the green on here. But because we blotted it up and made it go away, you can somewhat change the color, and that's what I'm illustrating. I'm not telling you to make purple and red balls, Christmas ornaments. I'm just showing you with vivid colors how you could change something that you've messed up. I think it's important to be able to fix mistakes so you don't stop doing it, so you don't get frustrated. See how I can change the color? And you can even put glitter on that if you want to for a tag to change it, but that'll fix it. And especially with little kids, if they make an error or something, there's a way to fix things, no tears, no crying. And they've created artwork. And I'm just going to put a couple more branches in here just to fill it in. But you can put ribbon. To fill it in. And you've got a cool little card. And you use that silly little pouncer thing. I don't know where to put it. Oh, here it is. This little pouncer thing. But you have to be really careful because you have to get the water off of it because these absorb a lot of water. So your circle's going to run if you're not careful. Hit a paper towel first. See how much water is even in there yet. And I've washed it. And so the materials that you use, have a scrap piece of paper next to you, and use this on that scrap paper before you put it on your masterpiece. It'll take excess paint, excess water, and it'll be a cleaner rendition of what you've got. If you want to do something in black and white, you can take a pen and do it in black and white. You don't have to add color at all. This one here, I drew a winter tree. I added color. This is got water. This in the background is dry. So I used a combination of wet and dry. But in order to get the sky a different color and not smear my tree, I put the yellow in dry after the tree was done. So that's a way to get a background in, if you want a background. So there are all the suggestions for little greeting cards, and you can always stamp your greetings, or if you're into calligraphy, you can write them in. But wait till the paint's dry. That's my main concern, is that you're going to get goo. So you want to keep it nice and clean. And you make a lot of people very, very happy with what you've given them, a little piece of yourself. Thank you.